Welcome back to another episode of Talking Chaos. I am the Condor, of course. Again, still, no one else is going to do this show. I am joined, however, with a new host. We've had some turnover. Warlock Fred has left us, possibly permanently. We're not entirely sure. But for now, other people, possibly the same person, will be filling his role. That has yet to be determined. As you are listening to this, you guys can check us out on social media. Go to facebook.com/talkingchaos. We have a Reddit, I think, subreddit. Kind of cool. Talking Chaos Podcast. But you are here with us nevertheless, so we thank you. This week, we're going to be talking about fanboys. And I'm going to intro my guest co-host today. This is Wolf.
Hello.
That's an ominous hello, if I've ever heard one.
No, man. I'm happy to be here. This should be fun. We'll see. If it's not, there'll be repercussions, but this should be a good time.
All right. Well, maybe I'll only spend a week in the cage. Like, it's 2 weeks was too long. I got to say that much.
Yeah, 2 weeks is too much. You gotta take your pets out and exercise them at least once a week, folks.
Yeah, that was half the reason why we took that 3-week break in, like, August, is I was stuck in a cage somewhere.
But sacrifices must be made for science.
Yeah.
And we're here to persevere.
Well, and it's not the first time a bird's been in a cage. Like, we jokingly talk about the fact that Warlock Fred turned me into a bird several years ago, and so I'm a bird.
That's a really weird analogy.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. It's going to tweak me out a little
Birds got to fly, bro. So we're talking about fanboys.
Fanboys.
Fanboy is kind of a millennial term to describe.
I feel like the generations of it started a much, much earlier than that. It hasn't reached, like, pop culture, like, the zeitgeist hasn't known what a fanboy is, maybe, for, like, the last 10, 20 years. But I feel like it's been around for a bit longer than that. If not necessarily in that exact verbiage, then definitely the ideology's been there.
Okay, so what's a fanboy?
Well, think about it. You say fanboy, and I don't know about you, but you immediately get that caricaturic image, right? Someone who's fucking dressed overly much in the products of whatever thing they adore, attending some sort of convention, waiting in long lines, doing ridiculous things, fighting to almost the death, tooth and nail, fist and claw to fucking defend whatever it is they believe in against, the normative masses.
Whether it's that vintage Playboy from the 70s or a trading card of your favorite ball player.
Sure.
I think it can be equated to the same thing.
Right, and since you're going to come in soon enough, of course, the sci-fi fanboys who make the front pages pretty heavy, right? Seconded only by the fantasy fanboys.
Right. Trekkies might be the most famous.
Trekkies and Star Wars fans are probably the most famous because it came out really early. Gene Roddenberry's fucking series was huge on TV, broke a lot of ground, did a lot of big things, became pretty popular. Same with the Star Wars movies, immensely popular in their own time. And something like any of those two that are popular when they come out, as well as getting a huge cult following, will of course develop a lot of fans. And then the question comes about of, like, of course we all have this ridiculous idea of a fanboy, but what's the difference between a fan and a fanboy?
Right. What's the line in the sand?
Right.
What's the crossover? Like, what point have you leveled up?
Is it the subject matter of which you're a fan? That can be contentious, which I find personally to be not the issue. I think it's the behavior related to the fandom that becomes the issue, and not actually the fandom.
Right. Can you hold a conversation without talking about this?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like, it's one of those, like, you can't blame the tool. You can't blame guns for violence, right? You don't blame knives for stabbing people. That's silly. You blame the people's behavior. And certain
or the
topics could be a little more alarmist than others, but I think that's silly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit of public knee-jerk. But
yeah, I've met, we'll talk about this in a second, but I've met girls who were fanboys of serial killers.
Absolutely, right? The groupie aspect, which is a terrible term, right? And you should never call someone a groupie, but it's an understood term.
But it closely resembles fanboy as far as behavior and intensity. the sort of things that you're weird about?
I think, personally, fanboy is a gender-neutral term, but a lot of people immediately picture, some 40-year-old dude still lives in his parents' basement, dresses up a lot, doesn't have any friends, has never had sex.
Right, Steve Carell and 40-year-old virgin with the action figures in the game.
Yeah, but a consummate fanboy, like an ultimate fan, has nothing to do with your gender. Like male, female, any of the shades of gray in between. I don't like to think in binary terms if I can help it, right? Like,
I try not to.
I don't think your gender fucking matters. Like, weird fans are weird fans because people are fucked up no matter what shape and color they come in, right? Or what god they bow to. We're all weird.
Yeah.
So, like, but the term fanboy does have that stereotypical male, like, attachment to it from its origins, right? Because that's a weird societal deviance that started the whole like picking on nerds and picking on the nerd hobbies, and we'll get into it more later. And I don't think it's just all nerd hobbies.
I was definitely a nerd when I was a kid, or I was deemed a nerd by other people at least, even if I hadn't decided to become that nerdy yet.
For sure, yeah. Sometimes you get put in the box without realizing what you're doing.
Right, and I experience what I call like waves of nerdiness, where I want to intensely enjoy this thing I just found.
Yes.
And I'm going to dive into every aspect and facet of it.
Right, you're a kitten with a ball of yarn, and the ball of yarn's fantastic, and can't wait to get your claws into it and pull it apart and unravel it.
Right, what's on the inside of this, for sure.
Oh my god, there's string everywhere, not realizing you've destroyed the thing you were
Well, like Star Wars, you mentioned, I've been a nerd about Star Wars forever.
I
watch all the stupid
I have, in fact, been an asshole about Star Wars, right? Like, when you get to the point, we'll talk more at the second half of this, but we'll dip into it here and there, like, I have absolutely corrected people before on Star Wars lines, Star Wars lore. I've had debates. I've hemmed and hawed about theorycraft, right? And you get to a point where, like, you start to wonder about yourself. Am I getting into gray areas of enjoying something that isn't real too much?
I've definitely tried to experience everything nerdiness has to offer, though, in the, like, generalistic sense. Like, I've played D&D. I've watched the nerdy movies. I've tried to watch the nerdy shows. Like, I've tried to get into things that I know that my other nerdy friends like and experience. A classic example is, like, Game of Thrones. I'd never read the books. I just jumped into the television show.
So are you maybe hypothesizing there's some sort of potential contagious yawn factor to fanboyism and other certain types of things where, like, your friends are really into it and your friends become super fanboys, so you get roped into it. Right. Like, is there an aspect of fanboyisms where certain amounts of hyper fans are hyper fans because it's popular now, which is a new addition to being a fanboy in the nerd culture.
Viral popularity.
Sure, because nerd culture hasn't become vogue except for, in the past decade, and it's kind of had a resurgence where, like, being a nerd is cool finally, and where was that when I was in fucking high school?
Then every 20 years they're cranking out 3 Star Wars movies, so that perpetuates that nerdiness.
Sure. Which I will forever be grateful for, no matter how terrible the movies are. Keep churning them out, Disney. Sweet baby Jesus, keep giving me that smack. I need it.
He taps the inside of his elbow.
I did. I made a bit of a fiend motion and smacked the vein there that I couldn't even see. I'm wearing a long sleeve sweatshirt, so it's kind of a silly gesture, but
I'm addicted to. I thought this would be a good topic to bring up because I'm a self-recognized fanboy about specific things.
Sure. Anyone who's exceptionally passionate about anything falls into this category. Whether you're a nerd, a normal person, you're a sports fan, a car fan.
Right.
All sorts of things actually fall into fanboyism. It's not just the quote-unquote classic nerd things that make you a fanboy. Anyone who has a certain level of passion can be judged on, a scale of fanboyism or fucking something like that, right? Like, you can get into it with any sort of hobby. But, like, of course, we self-identify with nerdy things and nerdier hobbies. So that's the things, of course, we're going to talk about and relate.
Specifically, yeah. Right. We're recording this on the weekend in the Midwest, and it dawned on me there's this, like, tiered system, okay? You may agree to the fact that this area seems to be really invested in football. So Friday.
Yes and no. To a point that you and I might say yes, but if you look at other parts of the country, definitely nowhere near as invested.
I just mean the Midwest.
Sure. We're mildly invested. We're not like some of the plain states or God help you, Texas, right?
Right.
But like, we're sure.
Not as intense as Texas, but we're borderline.
There's a bit of it, sure.
Friday night you have local. Mm-hmm. Saturday you have college.
Yep.
Sunday you've got the national level.
Yeah.
And to watch the people in the stands of any one of these games, if they have makeup on their face, they're a fanboy.
Yeah, I mean, if not a fanboy, then at least greater than like a level 1 fan, right? Like anyone who's in the city of Detroit and throwing on the old Hawaiian blue and silver is a bit more than a regular fan. Either you're carried away by the spirit of the endeavor and you slather on some face paint to make your friends happy, or you truly just want to represent possibly one of the most losing teams ever, but we love them anyway. And you know, you're trust me, like you're a Lions fan whether it hurts or not. You just kind of are. It's part of my Thanksgiving. It's not Thanksgiving unless I watch the Lions lose on TV. Or maybe win. At least give it a good try.
You have to fall asleep while they're losing.
Yeah, right? and listen to fucking Arlo Guthrie's Alice's Restaurant. That's Thanksgiving. Those two things, right? So like, but yeah, dude. Anyone who goes to any sort of sporting event, and you look at certain groups of fans are a little more carried away than others, right? Like look at Raiders fans. Jesus Christ, those are some crazy son of bitches.
Green Bay fans are very similar.
Yeah, like weird hats, like made out of cheese or fake cheese, but like. Raiders fans put on enough armor and makeup that like they could give some cosplayers a run for their money. Like,
yeah, cosplay, for those of you that don't know, it's when you dress up as your favorite thing. It could be a player, it could be a fucking character, or a playable something.
Something from a book, movie, some sort of form of media.
Regardless of the gender.
Regardless of gender. A lot of times cosplay gets gender bent, and gender fluid. And that's really fucking great. I really like some of the gender bent cosplay. Some of them turn out better, honestly.
Every time I hear the phrase gender bending, it sounds like fucking magic to me. I know it does.
To me, it's one of those like non-descriptors. It just lets me know that they're like, oh, cool, it's the non-norm role, whatever. I don't care. I'm about the attention to the fucking detail of the costume and like, did you nail the vibe of the role?
Right.
Like,
is the medallion that's supposed to be in the corner of your shoulder exactly as it's supposed to be in the place it's supposed to be?
I'll appreciate cosplays of things I don't like just because someone did such a nice job doing it, and it's become much more prevalent now, right?
Like
with streaming, right? Like streaming and like Twitch and YouTube have opened up all sorts of avenues for extreme fanboyism and niche things, and like let it fucking ride, and that's totally rad. And I think that it's made it a little bit more normative to become super into one or two things to an extreme, right? And like instead of having just like a broad taste of things, you grab a hold of one or two things and do it super hard, and like that can be a little more accepted in this day's internet culture than it was before, when people that were on the outlier of like a societal normal bell curve, if you will, of behaviors, right? And you're on one of those outlier layers where the curve's a little flat. You're one of them weirdos.
I'm a little flat.
Yeah, right? we all hit like, I try and hide in the peak. It doesn't always work. Sometimes I get caught out and I'm outlying there. But, you know, like, it's not like it was when you were like an Uber fan when the first trilogy of Star Wars was coming out. Could you imagine those guys that dressed in robes to like the second or third movie because the fans were into it and they dressed up or got into it?
In the 70s?
Yeah. Do you think anyone even did? I'm sure someone had to have. I've not heard of anything, but someone had to have. By the third movie, at least, somewhere. Yep. Somewhere someone dressed up for it and was super into it. Could you imagine the ridicule in that era? Like someone would take for something like that?
I try not to imagine how intense it would be, but I can only imagine it would be intense. Like, you imagine this, like, wedgies bullshit.
Sure,
but I've seen some fucked up movies about the torture that people endured.
Yeah, I mean, you can either put it like an 80s movie with crazy hijinks from the popular kid, giving the nerdy boy a wedgie, and then later on they become friends. Yeah, right. But that's usually horseshit compared to how that pans out in real life.
I want to say this guy probably got his ass kicked a few times.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Broken nose, maybe, some bumped ribs.
Dude probably identifies with, incels and, like, other modern things that weren't, like, a thing then, right? You laugh, but I'm trying to be serious. It probably fucking was traumatizing to him, because he just wants to, hang out with Obi-Wan and the boys, and instead he's getting shit stomped by some frat boys who had too many beers before they saw fucking George Lucas's.
I mean, if he paid attention to the movies, he'd
shitty
know
Western.
that if he's in tune with the Force, man, he can just bounce that shit like fucking.
Listen, man, the Force can't save you from everything.
Not an ass whooping.
No. We've seen it in the movies. The Force lets you down. Sometimes you get an ass whooping. It doesn't mean you're not a Jedi. It just means you weren't Jedi enough.
You think gearheads are fanboys if they're intense.
To a point, right? And that's where I feel like rating people on a scale of, like, their fan intensity becomes a thing. Where, like, sure, you can be an enthusiast or a hobbyist, but, like, it's in check. You might nerd out or geek out over certain things. I think the term geek applies more to nerd in terms of mechanical people, but that's just kind of a verbiage thing. I might be wrong. But, like,
geek to me is an outdated term for nerd. And nerd is, like, cooler.
Well, geek to me hails back to, like, carnival geeks and people that would literally do physical mechanical tricks via just feats of being a badass. They were geeks.
I forget
as opposed to nerds who would do things via, like, the head or thought, or, like, via thought process. So, like, someone who's really into, like, cars or classic cars or fixing things, or, like, makers are a really cool weird group of people that, like, God, I wish I had the wherewithal to be one.
What do you mean a maker?
So you need to look this up. This is a lookup for you, which is that's a Navy holdover from training, where if you don't know it, you have to look it up after the interview.
I got you.
Yeah, pretty self-explanatory.
Look up.
Right? I mean, you can't call it something else, because God help you, sailors need it slapped in their face.
I mean, there's not a lot up there, because I'm already a bird flying in the sky, but I'll look it up.
The fuck was I talking about? Fuck you.
Makers
are people that literally like to make their own things, kind of Rick-esque, right? Like, no, man, I make my own shit,
right? Yeah,
they'll literally grab a circuit board, program it to do something, attach it to other things, and, like, build a weird machine. Or they'll do some of it's in higher or lesser degree. Some of them, like, some makers just make, like, pinball machines, or, like, other random, it's whatever.
Right, but they're homemade.
Yeah, but
self-designed,
whatever loves your lamp, man. Whatever gets you fucking going, like, that's what they'll do, and they'll make it from, like, fucking scratch as they can. These people are, like, the bakers of the mechanical world. They're awesome. Right, but, like, various different things like that. Like, there's definitely fanboys and nerds of all sorts of stripes, because if you think about, to go back to the original car analogy, right, like, there's dudes that are ride and die by certain auto brands,
Mopar, etc.
Yeah,
we're from Detroit area-esque.
Sure, some people just get hardcore about it, right?
Pissing on Chevy because you're a Ford fan, kind of bullshit. I get it.
Sure, the Kelvin and Hobbes stickers on everyone's vehicles. Yeah,
That's a hilarious sticker, by the way. Never get sick of seeing Hobbes.
And, like,
and Kelvin.
Our state's definitely a gearhead state, right? Cars are pretty much recognized as a normal, cool thing to be into in our state.
Yeah, it feels like every 2 months somebody's got a car show going on somewhere.
Yeah, and, like, I don't know if that's cool everywhere, or if that's just because we were attached to Detroit Motor City, where, like, their infrastructure is fucking garbage because their whole city is based around everyone having a car. So you have, like, the people mover and nothing else.
Wolf's first episode, and the fists are out. He's just swinging.
Hey, man, I'll call it like I sees it. I spent too long being me. I'm not going to change it for anyone else. Fuck it.
He's got lycanthropy. He's the wolf man.
That is an interesting and fascinating disease. We should do an episode on lycanthropy sometime.
Okay, well, you hear it, fans. If you want lycanthropy, you know where to hit us up.
Hit us up on all the aforementioned links and nods and shenanigans that you do on the internet to get hold of random strangers that Condor dropped out. And let us know if you want a lycanthropy episode. We have a YouTube channel.
We have a Twitter account. We have all the things. So if you
I'll get into it. If we really get a call out for it and people really want it, I'll go perform some lycanthropy rituals. I will get a fucking fresh-blooded woods hide and sleep sleep in a puddle in a moonlit night and see if it like overwhelms me. If you want it, I'll do it. Let's go. I already have the dreams where I'm running around on 4 legs with blood in my mouth, so fuck it.
Do you know any insane fanboys personally?
Personally, so I dip my toe in some places a little too hard. I've met some people that are really into certain things and other aspects. I don't know if I'd classify some people as fanboys.
I've got one.
I've met some people that are like kind of extreme, but I've never met like an ultra extreme, right? Like someone who's maxing the scale out. I've never met like an ultra crazy where I'm like, holy shit, this dude's gonna find the person that wrote their favorite thing and like break into their home and then like cut their head off and have sex with their neck.
This
like,
is never. I've never met anybody that level.
Right.
This guy is like.
Are we doing a 1 to 5 or a 1 to 10?
We'll do
scale?
1 to 5.
All right, a 1 to 5. I've never met a 5.
I've never met a 5.
I'm probably a 3. I dabble in some 4s. I've met plenty of 4s, but I don't think I've ever met some 5s.
This guy is a 4 borderline 5.
Right. Some of those 4s that I've met probably have some 5 behavior in there I might not have heard about. Sure.
This is my dad.
Okay.
And
way to dime him out.
I don't care. He won't either. Because it's not that big a deal.
He's steady. He's got this. Don't worry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's Les Paul. The guitar.
The guitar guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. The guy who said you could put frets on a log and play it. Right?
Yeah,
and then did it.
Yep. Les Paul, he's got like 9 of them, and he's always on eBay checking every one out. He'll check registration numbers against databases.
Okay. So he's a straight guitar fanboy.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're calling that level 4 behavior?
Only because of the databases and the registration.
Does it interrupt his regular life?
No, but he spent more money than any person I've ever met on that.
Okay, the money thing's a different aspect. Like, a 3 doesn't have it impact their life too overtly, right? Like, it doesn't eat a ton. It either does a couple things small or, like, one thing big and nothing else too huge. Like, you either spend a little bit of money on a hobby or you spend a little bit of time on a hobby. One of the things might be too much where you're pushing towards 4. A 4 does a couple of things. They spend too much time on it where they start missing work and missing family events and shit like that. And they spend like a lot of money where like they're going to drop a non-budgetable amount of funds on items and things.
I don't think he would ever drop a non-budgetable amount of funds.
Okay, so it's borderline 4.
Like,
I would say.
I know that he might prioritize a really, really great guitar over a boat.
Sure. My father was the same way about shotguns.
Really?
Yes, dude. He to the point where like if he could get away with it any holiday, birthday, Christmas, whatever he could get, he'd try and tell my mom like, don't give me anything for like a couple years and then buy me a shotgun and try and like stock up gift credits and stuff like a kid. Like he was very specific about brands, years, models. It was one of those things where my mother could never surprise my father with a gun, because there'd always be some sort of technical issue he had with it. It was one of those, she straight up had to talk to him and interface with him and find out when he wanted to get the present. He was a pain in the ass. He was such a diva, right? When I think about it, he was way much more of a diva than my mother was.
Fucking word to use.
Yeah, dude. And like this woman was allergic to metal and like some nuts and like other things that were in a lot of candies. So like she couldn't take a ton of gifts. She's the diva. She was still super easy to buy for. It was ridiculous.
Fucking great.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Fucking great.
Absolutely. I totally understand. Right. No, like he never got super internet savvy, right? So he didn't troll the internet per se, but he definitely would spend time where like Dad would be gone and he went to a couple gun stores and other vendors and was price checking things and looking what was on the market and like he was almost like that about guitars, but he never learned to play himself, which was why he never started collecting instruments, right? He hung out with all the music heads. He never picked up the playability, so he never quite got into it. But he understood it. He loved to talk music. He just couldn't perform music. I'm the same way.
I've got some relatives in the South.
Oh, yeah?
who are some serious level 4 Dale Earnhardt fanboys.
Unfortunately, my old man hit that as well. He was a solid 3. Bordering on a 4 for the amount of time he spent watching dudes drive around in a fucking circle. I never understood it. It was cool, but, like, I got drag races. I got fucking high-intensity car performance, street races, actual road cars, things that were cool feats of mechanical, not these, like...
Let's try to get not too personal.
Because, yeah, but, like, no, I totally understand. No, yeah, like, but, like, I could get it to a point, but I never understood the NASCAR aspect of it. And it was, like, a version of all the things that I thought could be cool, and he latched on to the weirdest one.
I never quite understood NASCAR. I understand why people become fans of things. I get that. But, like, I personally don't understand that one.
But can you relate to someone who is into a thing, spends X amount of time watching it, tracks the stats, gets into the people performing? Would you say that you watch League of Legends play and keep track of those players nearly as much as any NASCAR fan would watch their drivers?
I will answer that in the bonus content of this episode.
Okay.
Which you guys as listeners can find at patreon.com/talkingchaos. Make sure you sign up for the $10 plus tier, and you'll qualify for that bonus content. It's like an extra episode's worth of material.
For sure. Totally worth.
But we're going to get into more.
But that ties us back to the fact that fanboys don't have to be nerds.
No, they don't.
They don't. They don't at all. And we're going to just smash that open and just declare it. And if you think we're wrong, try and hit us up and prove it. We'll have some dialogue.
Yeah.
If you're not right, we're right.
I don't.
Fanboys don't have to be nerds. You can be a fanboy.
They don't even have to be dudes.
Anything. No, at all. No, fanboy doesn't mean boy. It's like a vampire prince. It's gender neutral. It's like when I call someone dude. I don't mean dude like you're a guy. I mean dude like
hey man, person, right?
Like, hey guy, like I smoke too much weed, so the things I call you are all gonna sound like man terms, but they're not because I don't mean it because I don't see that.
I'm too lazy to recognize gender.
Yeah. It's more that I'm just unaware. Not that I don't care. It's just that I'm bad at identifying my surroundings.
Choose whatever you want. Be happy. We don't care.
For sure.
We don't care enough that we don't care what genders are. Man is everyone.
And by we don't care, we mean we care so much we don't care.
Yeah.
It's like the family, your family doesn't care. It's like the first time you came out and you told your friends and family and they're like, we don't give a shit, dude. And you're like, oh, right. Okay, cool. I guess it's better that you don't care, which is what all my friends did, so that was pretty fucking rad. Like, I jive on it. I'm that B in that terrible acronym that scares so many fucking, like, cis white people, right?
I don't know, I liked math.
LGBTQA, or whatever it is now, right?
I don't know what it is.
It's an alphabet soup now, but it's all sorts of people, and it's good. And we'll put as many letters in as we have to until everyone feels included. That's not a joke. You can laugh, but that's important, and I actually mean it, and I don't give a fuck. We will put as many letters in until everyone feels
like
included.
The most condescending shit I've ever heard of my life.
It does, but it's genuine. It's genuine, and it's important. People need to feel fucking included because they are. We're all fucking people. We're all in this fucking useless reality together. Let's make of it what we can.
It's pretty great.
It is great.
Useless
reality.
reality.
I mean, it's a choice. You have to make a choice to make it great because there's no fucking point. But just because it's hopeless doesn't mean it's not serious. Like, it's not serious.
This optimistic public service announcement is brought to you by Talking Chaos.
Just because there's no point to your reality doesn't mean you can't tune in and get some laughs listening to a podcast.
The more you know.
The more you know. The more you know. Right. But anyway, fanboys. So I feel like we should take a quick second and do a breakdown and actually, like, bust out a scale so that we can make reference to, like, a scale of fanboyism to try and actually break this down a little bit further.
Right. It's very easy to be a one-star.
Oh, for sure,
fanboy.
For sure. I'm gonna write some numbers down here, and we'll work on filling in, like, underneath them what they mean.
Right, I got you.
Yeah.
What do you qualify for level 1?
For level 1, you have to at least be a fan of it, right? You enjoy it. You will
You
will straight up admit you enjoy it. You will talk about it. You'll be engaged about it.
Public conversation about a given thing.
I'll put fan in quotes, right? You're out and proud. You're a fan of it. You like it. You'll discuss it. It doesn't mean you know everything about it. You might have gaps in your knowledge. You might not catch every episode.
Right,
You're
right.
a fan. That's a level 1.
But you know when it airs.
Sure, you know when it airs. You know some people in it. You know some shit about it.
Yeah. Level 2.
A level 2 knows when every episode is out.
Oh, yeah.
There's now a time investment involved where you've seen every episode at least once, maybe a couple repeats when you're trying to keep track of a fresh show. If it's an older show, you've probably watched everything 2, maybe 3 times. That's a level 2.
Yep.
Right? And that's not a huge time investment when you think about it, folks. There's a lot of people that watch all sorts of TV and
Right.
spend way further time doing all
I'm
sorts of other
thinking
things.
about how this applies to myself.
Yeah. Don't
Don't
get too judgmental. Just be clean about it. You'll admit to yourself what you are later. That's fine. But like for level 2, like you're still probably relatively polite, right? About it. You don't generally get in anyone's face when they fuck something up. You might do a polite correction of a term. You might have some
because
theories.
you're probably unsure if you're correct in what you've learned.
You're pretty sure. Right, you're pretty sure. Right, but you're generally pretty nice.
What's a
still.
level 3?
Well, all right, we have to fill in some of the lower tiers as we define the higher tiers here.
Yeah.
But a level 3, they know. Right? They fucking know.
Yeah.
When you're level 3, you know.
Yeah.
To the point where, like, you'll make a silly bet out of
Right.
it. Like,
One shot first. We know.
yeah, dude, punch to the testicles, I guarantee this character was in this movie. And the other person's
Right.
like, oh, okay.
Right.
They know.
The level of certainty is finite. And there's probably some willingness to go to, like, a public fan event at level 3.
Sure.
Whether it be a convention or, like, a group that, like, enjoys this. You're reaching out to other social groups.
You have a hobby-specific or a fan-centric specific activity lifestyle that you will start to engage in.
Right, or you may even
You
own
go to movie
merchandise
premieres.
about this.
You buy merchandise. You go to car shows.
Right.
You go to events for sporting teams.
Right.
Right. You're a level 3 fan. You know.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, no.
And I think
Chevy put that motor in this engine this year.
nah, man, that sounds like a 76. The way that thing's rattling down that road, dude. That's definitely not. That's,
Oh, you hear that purr? Right,
they,
yeah.
they didn't have them headers in there until fucking 76. I'm telling you, bro.
You have no idea what you're talking about, do you? Because I don't know if you're right.
I know enough to know it's what they sound like. I don't know what I'm saying. And that's what makes a good flim flam man, ladies and gentlemen. That's what makes a good flim flam man. You can talk the talk without walking the walk.
What I'm worried about is the definition of levels 4 and 5.
So, all right, level 4 is the level where you start to worry, right? And some of it's laugh-offable, some of it's not, right? Like level
Where
4,
some of the money spent may not be prioritized in a responsible manner.
this is where you get time written in capital letters as opposed to level 2, which is time in all lowercase, right? Time and money are now involved in potentially large ways.
Right.
You spend a lot on a hobby. You start collecting esoteric things associated with the
Cosplayers I
hobby.
put into level 4.
To a point, yes, absolutely. Cosplayers would just simply due to the time dedication.
Intensity.
Even if they don't necessarily have to spend a ton of money, because some of them find really awesome, rad ways to do things cheaply, there's still an insane amount of time and dedication that goes into cosplay
Research.
that
Right.
I would totally let them be like, but like, and being a high level doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you're a higher level fan, right?
No, the level of dedication.
The level of dedication.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily, it's just like traits where you start looking. Just because you're a sexual deviant doesn't mean you're a serial killer. It's just something that the FBI will look at when they're doing profiles, right? Like, you're a super fan, that's cool. But if someone murders the author of your favorite fantasy series, they might come knocking on your door to see if you have an alibi, right? Right. That's like
Immediate
that's the
suspect.
bridge between 4 and 5. So 4 is definite time, money, or we'll call the dedication factor, where you are just ultra committed.
Right. Level 5 is when it gets into dangerous.
As we will call it, because I don't know if y'all get in on it, but I totally do. We'll call it the Danger Zone! Because goddamn, I can't wait for that next season. That show's so good.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Archer on FX.
All right.
Oh my god, tune in, watch it. Free pub for them. It's so good. Speaking of fanboys, as I quickly get mildly rabid over an animated television show.
But the level 5 is like you have you had a personal protective order?
Level 5 is you know where he lives, right. And he has in fact issued a restraining order because you came to his house screaming about the final season.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. That is a level 5 fanboy. That is a level 5 is like not. Most people won't ever meet a level 5, in my opinion.
No, I don't think they will. I don't think I've ever met one.
It's one of those like tiers where you don't know they're a 5 until everyone's interviewing the Dateline crew about how they thought this level 4 was not a level 5. Right?
We thought they weren't a 5.
Yeah, dude, he seemed like a pretty normal fan, and they're like, normal? He had hair samples and blood and spit of the author, and they're like, well, when you travel in our circles, that's not too outlandish. It's just a bit weird. And when you look at a group of people that is, no shit, dressed in like a whole culture's worth of clothing from a culture that doesn't exist, from some man's fucking or woman's, some person's mind, they're literally just living in a whole fantasy world and then just like imbibing it and drinking it and regurgitating it out for everyone else. Like, no, it's not too outlandish to take the next step. But that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with being a fan.
Definitely means that you went through some weeks worth of garbage cans to get what you're looking for.
Right. There's a bunch of warning signs leading from 4 to 5. Right. Like, people should be paying attention.
If you guys want us to publish the book on fanaticism and how it can go too far, give us money.
Send us your address, a photo of what you currently look like,
and the school where your children go.
A quick schedule of your daily habits, and we'll talk to you about how fanaticism can go too far.
If you guys enjoyed this episode, go to our Patreon.com, sign up for that $10 tier, and you'll get the full bush, which is this entire episode plus about 30 to 40 minutes worth of content. We really appreciate you guys listening, and if you enjoyed Wolf and I, thanks for listening, guys.